Well, joining me live from Melbourne is Shadow Finance Minister Jane Hume. Thank you for your time, Jane Hume. Let me start by asking, after the inflation figures out last week, which showed quarterly underlying inflation had risen 0.5% in a quarter, or a 2% annual increase, and quarterly inflation had risen just 0.2% in a quarter, has the government achieved a soft landing, and should there be a rate cut?
Andrew, it's too little too late for many Australians who have seen their standard of living go backwards by 8.7% in the 3 years of this Labor government. Cumulatively, prices have risen by over 11% in that time, food by over 12%, rents by 17%, housing by 14%, electricity and gas by over 30%. So you can understand why Australians are feeling it in their hip pocket. Inflation is only part of the problem, but it is causing so much pain to ordinary Australians. The number of Australians out there that are on financial hardship programs, for instance, for their electricity bills has gone up by 66% under this government. Their mortgages have gone up. An average mortgage now requires an extra $50,000 a year. That's not the kind of money that you find down the back of the couch. And the number of Australians that have had to take on a second or even a third job has increased by 130,000. So under this government, standards of living have collapsed and Australians are feeling the pain. Moreover, Deloitte Access Economics is saying that they expect that standards of living won't be restored to pre-pandemic levels until 2030. So this is cold comfort for Australians that have been feeling the pinch, that have had to wind back their own expectations, make tough decisions around their kitchen tables about their budget because the government has failed to do the hard yards with its budget.
Have they failed to do the hard yards, though? Because the US had this problem, the UK had this problem, Canada had this problem, New Zealand had this problem. Unemployment here is lower. We haven't gone into recession. It is terrible for people out there, there's no question about that, but it has been the case in all developed nations, hasn't it? I mean, haven't they actually achieved the soft landing here?
And in all developed nations, interest rates have come back faster and sooner.
They were higher.
Which we haven't seen here in Australia. And unemployment is higher today than it was when the coalition left government. Moreover, economic growth in this country is a stagnant 0.8% over the last 12 months. And we've been in a per capita recession for 7 quarters in a row. If it wasn't for the incredibly high migration figures, over 1 million people in just 2 years, well, we would be in a recession.
So what should they have done?
I don't think there's anything for the government to crow about.
No, that's for sure. But what should they have done? Should they have spent less? Is that the bottom line here?
Well, certainly the government spent an additional $347 billion that the coalition would not have committed to and didn't commit to at the 2022 election. In fact, in the 2025-26 year, government spending as a proportion of the economy is going to be higher than any time on record outside of the pandemic.
But Jane Hume, if they spent less...
the Reserve Bank Governor...
Yeah, go on.
Yes, go on. Go ahead, Andrew. No, well, Michelle Bullock, the Reserve Bank Governor, has said that government spending, that growth of the public sector, has been one of the reasons why it's taken so long to get inflation under control. That, in fact, it's making the situation worse, making the Reserve Bank's decision to lower rates that much harder. And that will certainly be one of the factors that Michelle Bullock and the Reserve Bank Board have to consider when they make their rate cut decisions.
All right, let me ask about the shadow cabinet reshuffle. So Peter Dutton's put Jacinta Price in charge of government efficiency, James Stephens in charge of waste reduction. If you were to become Finance Minister, you shadow finance, isn't that your job, government efficiency, to find things to cut?
Well, Well, this is not unusual for a coalition government to be focused on reducing government waste and improving government efficiency. We've had ministers for government efficiency and reducing red tape and improving government services in the past. It's fantastic to have Jacinta Price as part of the team. She is a warrior for the cause, having already identified so much waste and mismanagement in her own portfolio. It'll be fantastic to have her as part of this
So
team.
it's not
and
undercutting
don't for a second
you?
think that there isn't... Oh gosh, no, of course not. And don't think for a second that there isn't an awful lot of government waste to go around. We can start by talking about the 36,000 additional public servants that have been appointed by this government. That's about 40 new public servants every single day since they have come to government. And at the same time, we've actually seen a reduction in the quality of services that are being delivered. So just for example, the Department of Health has increased by 47%. I was talking to Anne Ruston about this just yesterday. And yet at the same time, bulk billing rates have gone backwards. The Department of Energy and Environment has doubled in the number of public servants, and yet approval times, environmental approvals, are slower and emissions have gone up. Services Australia have added an additional 4,000 public servants, yet it takes longer now to apply for a pension, around 48 days compared to 35 under a coalition government. If you're on the phone to the children and parenting services, wait times up to about an hour. It takes 5 times longer to get a low-income card than it did under the coalition. So of these 36,000 new public servants, you're not getting 20% more. That's a 20% increase of public service. You're certainly not getting a 20% improvement
All right, I'll get to that in a
your
second.
public service. What are they doing?